All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. Now, we're right in the midst of this MLB season. The All Star game's right around the corner. And of course, with that said, before you know it, the trade deadline is going to be here. So I just want to talk about some players right now that could potentially be on the move prior to MLB's trade deadline. You think about Shane Bieber, the starting pitcher for the Cleveland Guardians. He's under contract through 2024. He's been one of the top pitchers in the American League in recent years. But you just have to wonder if the Guardians were to fall out of the race, would he be on the move? Now, right now, Cleveland is 6 games back in the wild card race in the American League, but they're just 2 games behind the Minnesota Twins for the top spot in the Central. But it just comes down to whether or not the Cleveland feels like they have a push. But even with that said, even if it's not this year, maybe at the winter meetings, I really don't foresee a scenario where Bieber is pitching for Cleveland next year because they can definitely get something back for him. Speaking of pitching and speaking of the American League Central, I think that the Chicago White Sox could be very busy prior to the trade deadline. You look at the Sox right now, they're 5 games back of the Twins, but they're 9 games under 500, and they're also 9 games out for the final wild card spot. And I think the White Sox, at some point between now and the deadline, are going to be very active, and I do expect them to throw in the towel. One name to keep an eye on is going to be starting pitcher Lucas Giolito. Free agency's right around the corner for him. And I don't see a scenario where he's in the long term plans of the White Sox. Sticking with the White Sox, his battery mate at times, Yasmani Grandal, where you got a guy who's a veteran catcher and he could be valuable on the trade market to a contender. Let's see how a guy like Liam Hendricks looks as he's making his return. These are 3 guys right here, as well as Tim Anderson, the shortstop, who could possibly be moved this summer if the White Sox do decide to throw in a towel. Sticking with the Windy City, I'm going to go to the other side, the north side, with the Chicago Cubs and starting pitcher Marcus Stroman. This is a walk year for him. He's putting together a solid campaign and he's pitching like a guy that is about to hit free agency. You know, when you think about Marcus Stroman in his last 5 starts, he's given up a combined 5 runs. And with that said, he's showing that sizzle, he's showing that flair, and on top of that, we know how guys tend to get into the zone when it's contract time. Sticking with teams in the Central divisions, I think if the St. Louis Cardinals decide to throw it in, and of course things are not looking good right now for the Redbirds, could they move on from starting pitcher Jordan Montgomery? We got to wait and see. Back in the American League Central with the Kansas City Royals, and of course the Royals are way out of it, and you have a guy in your bullpen the likes of Aroldis Chapman. I think in the right scenario with the right team, a motivated Aroldis Chapman could do some damage to a contender's bullpen. We've seen what Chapman looks like when he's motivated. We've also seen what Chapman looks like when he's not motivated. So with that said, what team would go out there and make a run at Chapman if one does? But I think it's going to happen because, of course, the Royals are way out of it. Sticking with the American League Central, the Detroit Tigers and the starting pitcher Eduardo Rodriguez. He's putting together the best season of his career. He's about to hit the free agency market. And of course, I think somebody is definitely going to swoop him up between now and the deadline. Randall Grichuk, the outfielder for the Colorado Rockies, could he be on the move? Sticking with the National League West, you look at the San Diego Padres, one of the biggest underachievers so far this season. The Padres came into play today 9.5 behind the Diamondbacks in the West. They're also in 4th place in that division, but they're just 2.5 games out for the final wild card spot in the National League. Now you got a guy like Blake Snell who's going to be hitting free agency soon. He's not the pitcher that he was when he went 21-5 in 2018 for the Tampa Bay Rays, but this guy is a valuable lefty who can pitch in the postseason And he could be valuable if San Diego does fall out of contention. We'd have to wait um, and see on that. But these are just some names of some players that I think could potentially be on the move. Of course, with that said, pitching is always at a premium. And when teams have an eye on the postseason, you can't get enough pitching. And I think this comes down to which teams are going to be willing to throw in the towel on this season with an eye towards 2024, as well as the teams that have guys that are coming up on free agency and they know that they're not going to be able to either sign these guys or they just want to distance themselves from them altogether. But nonetheless, obviously, now in the current state of Major League Baseball, you have less teams that are going to be sellers at the trade deadline due to the fact that you have more postseason spots, which gives more teams hope to get there. But nonetheless, it's going to come down to which teams are going to be sellers, which teams are going to be buyers, and the buyers. What are they going to be willing to give up? And of course, what are the sellers looking to ask? What are they asking for, rather? Nonetheless, I do expect some activity at the trade deadline. I do expect the White Sox to be very active because I really, of the guys mentioned tonight, I don't see too many of them in the long term plans going forward for Chicago. But nonetheless, these are just some guys that I think could be on the move. There could be some more. And let's see what happens around Major League Baseball between now and the trade deadline. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the Sports Discussion Group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.